Well, the Federal Reserve raising interest rates by 0.25%, as expected. Fed Chair Powell saying in the news conference it's unlikely the Fed will cut rates this year. Joining us now, former Council of Economic Advisors Chairman Jason Furman and Evercore ISI's Krishna Guha. Guys, welcome. Jason, so what's the bigger challenge here or risk here as we get lower in inflation and it gets harder to lower it? Not raising enough going forward or signaling cuts too soon and letting inflation come back?
Look, the biggest risk in our economy is inflation. That's already there. It's not a hypothetical. Recession risks have diminished quite a lot. I think it's more important that the Fed signals that they have a very high bar for cutting rates than it is that they raise rates more. But if inflation comes in on the path that they had back in June, they'll need to stick with the interest rates they had in the path they had back then with at least another hike.
Krishna, has the Fed gotten this under control now?
Well, there's a long road ahead, but the incoming information is constructive. It's encouraging. You know, we are seeing the disinflation advance without a large weakening of the labor market in particular, without a significant increase in unemployment to date. Now, I'm sure Jason will remind us that the jury's still out in terms of how this will play out going forward. But so far, so good. It feels like this is the last hike in all likelihood. And my sense from Powell today is that privately, he probably thinks it's the last hike too.
Interesting. Jason, want to get your reaction to that, but also to the fact that now with this 11th hike today, we've seen 525, 550 basis points of tightening since last March. And you can make the argument that financial conditions are still not particularly restrictive. Why?
Yeah, so first of all, I agree with Krishna. You know, we've had a lot of good news, and I'm feeling good about that news as well. But the job of the Fed is to be really, really nervous, to manage risks. And the question is, you know, what is the risk they're trying to manage? That risk is inflation. And I think your question is exactly right. When you're thinking about additional hikes, you have to think, where are financial conditions right now? Interest rates, the ones that matter, basically haven't increased since last June. The dollar is weakening. The stock market is up. Add on top of that all the fiscal stimulus we have a lot of things that could potentially reignite or at least stop the decline of inflation in this economy that I think the Fed still needs to be worried about.
Yeah, I mean, Krishna, just going back to the shift from modest to moderate in the language from the FOMC release today, and also just the comments from Powell at the presser, soft landing. When will we know that we have achieved a soft landing, if that is in fact the case?
Well, so let me take both parts of your question. First up, I think the change in the assessment of growth from modest to moderate is important. It's also important that we read it in a nuanced way. So modest is weak growth in Fed speak. Moderate is the soft side of trend. So they are upgrading their assessment of what they're seeing on the growth side. I think the signal here is A, we see it, we're on it. But B, we're not overreacting to it. We're not characterizing growth as strong, as firming, as strengthening. Let's see how that plays out. I think the point is that upside risk to growth is one of the risks, per Jason, that must be on the Fed's radar screen right now. But I think their assessment is, so far, we are not in the terrain where that upside risk to growth looks like the dominant factor in the Fed's calculations. In terms of a soft landing, really the whole premise of the soft landing all along is that we can continue to disinflate without a sizable increase in unemployment. I've been on the more optimistic side of that debate from the start. I'm gradually becoming additionally optimistic as the new data comes in. But I would certainly say that the jury is still out on that, and that his case is not yet proven.